Hey there! So, a few things I want to clarify before this video begins. This video is about my experience transitioning and about me getting boobs in 3 weeks. Sometimes my brain and my mouth don't communicate well, so I will put up a little note on the screen when that happens, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist, I am not your psychologist, I am not any of that. The purpose of this video is for me to explain my life events with you so that hopefully it can help you either learn something about trans people or to help yourself out in your own transition. I'm going to talk about how I've got a weird blood disease that means that my whole process is a little bit different than most people. You can skip this if you don't care for it, it's fine. Then I'm going to talk about boob surgery and the process I've taken for that. There is so much to cover about this whole concept and about everything that I've been through, and I just don't have enough time to cover it all. So there's more to getting to surgery than even I was able to explain. And then the last thing I'm going to say is just a message to you, which I'll repeat before the video even begins. Basically, I know that transitioning may be the hardest thing you've ever done. I get that maybe you're an ally, a supporter, you're trying to become more knowledgeable so you can help someone else in your life. This is not an easy path for anyone to go down, especially not now. You know, it's harder than ever to be trans. There's nothing I can really do about that. I can't wave a magic wand and just make the world a more inviting place for you. What I can do is to give you an insight into the steps that I've taken to make my life a lot easier for me. And hopefully, you can do the same for you. You can take this knowledge and make your life or the life of someone you care about a lot easier. All of this, all of these surgeries that we do, all of this hormone replacement that we do to get rid of the dysphoria will not get rid of the pain you feel if you can't love yourself first. And even if other people might not tell you that, I will. You deserve to be loved, you deserve to have a good time on this planet, and you deserve to be accepted as who you are. Take care, and enjoy the video. Hi there. So, I have top surgery, and essentially, the purpose of me making this video is to help you. There aren't enough resources out there for people who are first going through this process. Even now, as I've been going through this for about, 3 years now, 3 going on 4, I guess. Wow. It's not always easy to find someone in your local community who's been through the same thing. All of my friends who are trans men or haven't gone through this part of the process yet. And so there's just not a whole lot of resourcing that I could find. I've read about some of this online, and I'm sure you probably have too. But I wanted to make this video because there's a difference between reading and seeing and hearing someone else describe the step-by-step process of what this is like. Because honestly, to get to a point where I could even have the surgery, I've been planning for it for over 2 years. So, in preparing for this for almost 2 years now, I've had to go through a lot of steps. I have a rare blood disease known as APS. Now this stands for antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. Essentially, it just means that my blood coagulates a lot more. For example, let's say you go and you cut yourself while you're cooking, or you scrape your knee, whatever. What prevents you from bleeding out is coagulation. It's your body stopping the bleeding. And that's important because if you didn't have that ability, we would all just bleed out and die. So the tricky part is, in my case, my body does it too well. When I go to coagulate, it coagulates much more than it should. And what this does is this can form a blood clot. Blood clots are really dangerous. And people who are perfectly healthy in every other way can suddenly have this activate. That's what happened to me. On top of that, I'm on an anticoagulant called Lovenox. It's a shot. I take it once a day every day. bruises like a son of a bitch, but keeps me alive. What that does is make it so that if any clot does form, it breaks down and it prevents it from getting bigger. Cannot stop me from clotting. That's good, because again, if I scrape my knee, I would die, right? If I couldn't clot. So we have to have some clotting. This just prevents the big scary ones from getting me. And it has been proven to be a really good treatment for APS for a long time. So all of that has been established, which is a lot about me and my personal life. Now, I've already had surgery since being diagnosed for APS. Went fine. I saw 5 different specialists. They all told me that I can have any surgery I want because there's a surgery for every condition. And they told me I could do it safely. And I already have done it safely, and it was a complete success. That was over 4.5 hours long of surgery. This next surgery that I have in 3 weeks from now is going to be 1 hour long. So let's dive in to the portion of the video that I actually talk about breast augmentation, because that's probably why you're here. And I'll put a thing in the beginning to skip the introduction if you don't want to hear the uniqueness of how cool it is that this is happening, and then maybe it doesn't apply to you, so fuck it. But I'm gonna kind of give you a breakdown on how I got to a point where I could even have it happen. I had to get 2 different letters of recommendations from 2 different therapists and a diagnostic assessment, and I had to get my 2 different specialists, because I've got this APS thing, to sign off on the surgery. So that's 5 different letters from 5 different health professionals just before we could even have a discussion of it happening, which is a lot. And now once that's done, I send it in to my care team. I had an initial consultation, which is just talking to the doctor. They told me that I needed X, Y, and Z letters at the initial consultation. Before that happened, I called in to the gender care team and I asked them what they needed of me ahead of time. Wait lists for trans surgery are notoriously long. So my mentality here is, okay, I have this insurance that's going to cover it for free. Amazing. Now let's not delay it as much as possible so we can guarantee that it's actually going to happen before anything happens to my insurance, because you never know how that's going to go. I call up the gender care team. They tell me what I need ahead of time. Ask them what they need ahead of time so that when I have this initial consultation and the doctor says you need 2 letters from your doctor, I already had that done. I did this ahead of time so that we could expedite the process. I did not want to wait any longer, but that took a lot of work, obviously. Your insurance company is going to require different things of you, and for me, even the specific letters had to contain certain sentences and explain certain things before insurance would even cover it. It was a nightmare. Like, these letters, each one had to have like 26 different topics covered, and they all had to be formatted in a specific way, and at the same time they all had to be in the unique words of the therapist, which is bullshit. It's really just made to be harder than it needs to be, and in my opinion that's to prevent people from getting the care that they need. So I recommend do the due diligence and do it ahead of time so that you can save yourself a lot of pain later on. A doctor just kind of tells me basically what the procedure is like. He told me it was going to take an hour, told me where it would take place. He told me what he needed of me before we were even going to have the surgery, gave me time to ask questions, and then he wanted a consultation in person. That in-person pre-op was a bit hard for me because finding someone who took my insurance and could perform the surgery that I needed in the way that I needed meant that I have to fly or drive over 4 hours just to get to him, and then 4 hours back. It's a long thing. At that meeting in person, what will probably happen is they're going to take chest measurements. On top of taking chest measurements for me, this is something no one told me was going to happen, but I figure I'll tell you. They took photos of my chest. You know, it's personal. That's your body. But they do that so that, one, before you have surgery, your doctor can re-examine your measurements to make sure that they are giving you the right type of implant, they're doing the right type of incision, they can plan it, map it out in their head, just so that they have more resources. And we want more resources so that we have more of a chance of getting the right result. Then they did my general measurements. For me, when I went on hormone replacement therapy, I only ever got an A cup. you know, I have boobs, but they're stuck in like an early stage of puberty. They haven't advanced at all. That's kind of common for a lot of trans girls. So I get that done. And they decide for me what kind of implant would be best and what kind of size would be best. That's interesting for me because when I did all of my research, people got to choose their size. They chose my size for me because it depends on my diaphragm. And because it's bigger, that actually means I have to have bigger tits. And the reason for that is because it needs to look proportional. I don't think that's like a downside. I think a lot of us kind of like to hear like, whoa, I can go bigger. So for me, that means that I'm going from an A cup to a D cup overnight. Now, when you talk to your provider about this, they use a different unit of measurement. I think it's called cc's. So it doesn't directly translate to cup size. It's not like we're going from metric to inches. It kind of feels like we're going to pounds to inches or something like that. Like it's a whole different type of measurement. But yeah, so there I am getting my consultation. They take pictures of my chest, they take measurements of my chest. I get to ask any questions that I want. The type of questions that I asked were kind of not what they were expecting. I asked like, how big is the incision going to be? Is it going to scar? That's important to me because I don't just want like a massive scar over each of my tits, you know, it kind of feels like defeats the purpose. I learned from that it's a very small incision. How can it be this big and also have an entire like D cup of boobage added in? I don't know, but they seemed pretty certain that it was gonna happen that way and that it wasn't gonna scar at all. Now, I read that in the past, at least, it was guaranteed to scar a little bit. You know, that amount of scarring will always happen. I guess time has passed to such a point that that's not the case anymore. It just doesn't scar. Depends on provider, but at least for mine, that's what I heard. If you work, you're going to need to take time off of work for this procedure. It depends on kind of what you do. I work a desk job. They told me I could go back like 2 to 3 days later. I heard anecdotally from a lot of trans women that that's bullshit, and it took them about like a week to a week and a half to go back because ultimately you can't move your arms that much. And even if you can type, the amount of pain that you're in is so much that it's like, I don't know, it's like having the flu and going to school. You could do it, but how much is it going to help you? And if it's your job, you're probably not going to be doing it that well, so they probably don't want you there anyways. So what I recommend is before you have surgery, plan on taking like a week to a week and a half off. And if you have like a job that you have to move heavy boxes or do anything more physical, more towards 2 to 3 weeks. I was told it takes like a month or two until your boobs are finally set. Or, I mean, I think it's 3 months until they're fully set, but it's a month or two before you can start going back to your regular activities. So if you pick up heavy stuff, you might have to wait for a month, so you might have to come back doing partial work or find some compromise with your employer. So keep that in mind, because if you don't keep that in mind, that could be another hiccup. For me, that means that I have to go on FMLA, Family Maternity Leave Assistance, which means that while I'm out for this amount of time, I am still guaranteed to have my job. I recommend that anyone going through this process tries to go through FMLA. It's more paperwork, it's more annoying, but what it does is it guarantees that you're still going to have your job when you come back. And there's a lot of discrimination and hate towards trans people already, so maybe we can like empower ourselves so we don't have to worry about it happening as much. Back to my consultation. You have to wear a bra, like a bandage bra for a while, like a specific medical type, so get ready for that. I was told the look of it isn't going to look natural until 3 months have passed. I kind of mentioned that before, but just expect that like you're having a pretty intense surgery. They're gonna be putting a lot in your body. So it's gonna take some time for your body to adapt to that. It's not just gonna happen right away, right? Like, the end result is amazing, but we have to go through hellfire to get there. So keep that in mind. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of time off. It's only like an hour long. Most people can leave the day of. For me, because I talked about before about that APS stuff, they want me to stay an extra day because I live 4 hours away. And because I live 4 hours away, they just want to make sure if anything goes wrong, that, which it'll usually happen the day after or the day of, that I'm there close enough to the doctor to get the help that I need rather than fucking 4 hours away and then we have to go back, right? So I recommend looking into that if you're going through a similar thing and you have any sort of extra medical condition, talk to them about that. If you have to fly or drive or it's a distance for you, bring that up. I was able to get easier appointment times and better locations, and I was able to get some of it done electronically over like e-visits. That helped me out because I'm a far distance away and having to go each time. A lot of us are poor. You know, that just is a fact. So if you're poor, don't make it also harder for yourself by having to constantly fly back and forth. Assert yourself. Tell them, hey, I have to have it through an e-visit because if I don't get an e-visit, I go broke and I don't know how I'm going to eat the next week. You should not have to put, your Maslow's hierarchy of needs aside so you can get the surgery. There's a world in which it can happen harmoniously. Work towards that world. I know a lot of people think that the surgery is the most important thing in the world. It's very important, but so is your personal and mental safety. Oh, I got to actually feel one of the implants. That was nice. I think I felt a gummy bear implant, which is like a newer one. I know a lot of people like that one. I recommend asking them that. Like, being able to feel one for me was really nice because it's like, well, this is going in my body. I want to know personally what's going to be stuck in my body. You know, I don't just want to show up and I'm like, well, do whatever you got to do. I think more questions are better than less when this is kind of the world that we're in. All of us were talking about how, like, man, we wish we had one of these at our desk just to like a new fidget toy. So I got to feel one. That was awesome. I think I felt a different version than the one that I'm getting. I'm getting silicone. So the old versions of breast implants are saline and silicone. Saline is like a water type of solution from what I understand. The problem with saline is it can rupture, and if it ruptures, it deflates. So you're gonna know pretty quick if it goes wrong. The new silicone ones, they're not made of water, and they have a very natural breast-like feel. So when you get them, they feel normal, and if they rupture, you don't actually have to go in right away. It doesn't really like explode out like a saline boob does. So you can kind of not have to worry as much about that. On the talk of breast implants, I was told that they typically last anywhere from 10 to 20 years, but they can often go longer than that too. Now, this is a recommendation by the people who make the boob implant, and in my opinion, if you are going to make a business model off of selling a lot of boob implants, then it is in your best interest to tell people that they need to get more breast implants more often, because they do have to get replaced. This isn't a permanent solution. For female to male folk, it's the opposite. It's a permanent solution, but it's a lot more intensive of a surgery. You know, they're taking a lot away. It's, in my experience and what I've looked up, anecdotally, most trans women, or most people who have a boob implant at all, they get theirs replaced on average of once to twice per their life. So it's not that much, which reminds me, try and look for different modes of transportation. If you're poor like me, trains were nice because it was a total of $150 for me and another person round trip, whereas one round trip plane ticket was like $490 in state. You know, it's crazy how expensive it was, even if we booked ahead, which is what we did. If you can find another mode of transportation down, like, look at all your options, because $150 for two people compared to $900 for two people means that you can pocket $750 for your surgery and for recovery later, and for the time off that you're going to have to take off of work anyways. It's just nice, you know, it just makes more sense. Before you just say like, oh, I'm just going to go down to the cities, or oh, I'm just going to go fly to Taiwan, or yada yada yada, where are you going to stay? How much is food going to cost? How much is transportation going to cost? This is all radically important shit, because if you can figure out cheaper modes of transportation or cheaper and safer places to stay, all of that money adds up to maybe getting another surgery later down the road that you would never have had the access to have. Part of what has helped me through this too, especially for all these appointments, is I have friends. Friends who are offering to drive me down and back, friends who are staying with me, friends who help me emotionally through it all, which I find to be just the most amazing thing ever. So try and have a very strong support group. This is a very intense process, physically and mentally, that we really shouldn't go through alone, you know, and you shouldn't go through alone if you are going through this process. I had that consultation, my pre-op, and after my pre-op they said, okay, cool, we're gonna schedule you 3 weeks later. You'll hear back from someone within 3 weeks, and then you'll get your appointment time after that. I waited 3 weeks, I didn't hear from them. I called up my insurance. My insurance said that nothing was even going through, which I thought insurance was smarter first, because if my healthcare team had put a referral through insurance, talking to them, they would have just told me to go talk to my insurance. So let's just cut out the middleman, right? But on top of that, I found out through messaging my care team that I was supposed to get a complete blood count. It's like a panel that they do, just like a general thing to make sure that you're ready for surgery. My doctor put that in the footnotes of the footnotes in an online version of the readout for that day's session. So I didn't even have tests listed on my online chart, nothing like that. No one told me I needed them. It was just hidden in this document. So if you are going through this, I really recommend making sure, like, hey, you're probably gonna have labs. And if your doctor says you don't, it might be hidden somewhere in your notes to get them done. They're gonna expect you to do that on your own. They're not going to tell you where to go, or at least in my experience, they didn't tell me where to go, they didn't tell me what to do. I just had to make it happen, call people, and organize. So try and be on top of that if you've been waiting for a while, and reach out a bunch. I had to reach out like 5 or 6 times before anyone talked to me. And what I found was important was, yes, I talked to the nursing staff for the doctor that I'm talking to, but I also called in the scheduling team for the entire hospital and emailed like the supervisor for the gender care services center itself. By talking to multiple different groups, I was able to get in touch with the one person who could actually get me in touch with a doctor and get things moving right away. If you're getting stonewalled by like one person and you feel like you can't get anything out of them, go to someone else. You know, don't wait. I know that this whole process can be really annoying, and there's a lot of like red tape that you have to go through, and the bureaucracy can be maddening. So if there's any way that you can make your own experience happen faster, take advocacy over yourself. Be your own best friend. Make it happen. Don't wait for other people to do it. Do it yourself, you know? So anyways, so that happened. Finally got my blood work done. Found out later that the entire department had switched over. So I didn't hear back again for another like 2 months. Or no, I guess it's like a month and a half now. What was supposed to be 2 to 3 weeks became 2 to 2.5 months, which was a lot longer than what I was expecting. So I finally got my call back, and after that happened, it was like this. Like, I got my call back, which was last week sometime, like 5 or 6 days ago. And after that, it was like schedule the COVID test, schedule the actual operation, get a pamphlet sent to you, have a pre-op made. Before your appointment, you're allowed to have one more visit with your doctor before surgery for any other questions. I didn't really feel like I needed one, but we set one up anyways, just because, you know, it's better to ask all of the questions that you can, because in my experience, when it comes to having surgery, you see the anesthesiologist, you don't even see the doctor. They put you under, you wake up after the surgery, and you probably will never even see your doctor consciously through the whole surgery process. So the day of surgery, you don't even get to see your doctor and ask them any questions. So you should do so ahead of time. Don't bank on the fact that after surgery your doctor is going to come see you. A lot of times they're booked. So they're going to have your surgery, move on to the next person, move on to the next person, send you like their email in case you have questions later. So got next week a pre-op, which is with like a pre-op doctor specifically. They go through all of your risks, like do you smoke, do you drink, how are we going to manage that, is it a complication for the surgery, do you have like diabetes, any other underlying health concerns, have APS, so we have to talk about that, stuff like that. Just general stuff to make sure that another doctor is signing off and saying like, hey, you're safe to have surgery and you're probably not going to die, which is important, because if they need to like change up the surgery method, like I talked about before, there's so many different ways for doctors to perform so many different types of surgeries nowadays. If they need to change their approach to make sure it's safer for you, let's have one more session before we fucking start cutting up my internal organs. So I have that going on. Then I also have the appointment with the doctor. After that, for any last minute questions, he has questions for me, I have questions for him. He wants to make sure that I'm going to follow a strict regimen before my surgery, which for me means getting off of hormone replacement therapy 3 weeks before I have surgery. Even though I'm on the patch, they want me to be off of it. And then after that, I have to get more blood work done, which, you know, it's just how this goes. It's like blood work, paperwork, blood work, appointment, paperwork, and then surgery. That's all over. It's very like, it's so much back to back to back, and then you're done. So then I also have to get on FMLA, schedule time off with my boss and all of that, you know, make sure that it's covered, make sure that goes through, get the hotel rooms, make sure we have enough money for food, make sure that we have a ride there and back, all sorts of stuff. You know, you gotta plan out every little thing. And because I heard about it 5 days ago and it's in 2.5 weeks, that means I have 3 weeks to do everything. I mean, it's just like, that's how it is, you know? Especially with these doctors who have these long wait times. Sometimes an appointment comes up and they're like, yo, we can get you in 2 weeks. And it's out of nowhere. And for me, I had plans for the next 2 weeks. I had events I was going to. I was going to get my ears pierced. Fuck that. None of that's happening now. Now we have to cancel all of that and just focus on the surgery. So be prepared for that. You know, like, if you're on a wait list, sometimes people cancel. Or sometimes something opens up. Or sometimes they're like, oh, I actually have an extra hour that day. Or yada, 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 yada. So be ready for the fact that at any moment, when you start this process, someone can just call you and then your life changes. And then 2 weeks later, you have the surgery you've been waiting for 20 years. And for me, like, it's over in an hour, you know? Like, 20 years of pain and discomfort and anxiety and dysphoria and body shame, just like that, you know, just like that, it can be over. I don't know if you've ever had surgery, but for you who is watching this, if you're considering this, during surgery, they put a tube down your throat for anesthesia to knock you out so you don't remember it. Some people are resistant to anesthesia. I'm not. But also, if you've had it before, for me, last time I had it, the tube that they had was a little too big. And so what it did was it nicked the back of my uvula. When it did that, it gave me an infection. And I'm actually resistant to almost all forms of pain medication. So that infection hurt like a bitch because I couldn't eat anything, I couldn't drink anything, I couldn't breathe without being in constant pain on top of the pain of the surgery. So if you've been through this type of thing before, you can bring it up to your anesthesiologist before you have surgery so that you can get like a smaller tube, or they can do it a different way. You know, like they can build the surgery around what you as a person need. So advocate. But yeah, then after this is done, I'll be in a medical bra for like, I think a month or two. I'm sure it's gonna take a long time for me to fully get used to it. For cis women and for boob wielders who just have boobs. You know, typically boobs are like it's a slow process. It's like it grows slowly every day, and then like 4 years later you have a D cup. It's not all at once. For trans women, we do get it all at once. That's different. That takes an extra bit of time to get used to it, you know, which makes sense. It's a huge change to your body all at once, and you really don't have time to process the change until after it happens. Yeah, I think this is kind of everything I wanted to talk about. I'm gonna post an update to this video after I have my surgery, and you know, once I'm healed and shit. I'm not gonna do it right away because fuck that, but I'll let you know how I'm doing. And until then, I hope you take care, and it's gonna be okay.